Welcome to yoga. My name is Nestia Stupid. So, start that again. Hello, I'm Jennifer. That was bad. Hi, I'm Jennifer. Welcome to yoga. Today's practice will be a deep stretchy practice. We'll focus on some hips and some really releasing. When we do these yin style practices, these deep stretching practices, it's really good for relieving stress, relieving tension, and just letting go of things that may not be serving you. It's also really good to tack on at the end of a workout to get that nice big stretch in the legs, the hips, or wherever you might have worked out that day. So with that, let's find a nice easy seated pose. Before you do, you might like to have a block or a pillow to use for some of our poses. They'll help you get a little deeper into the pose. They'll help you find them more accessible. So once you've found your block, once you've got yourself back to your mat, let's just start in a nice, easy seated pose. It could be cross-legged, it could be however it feels good to you. So take a nice deep breath. Really feel the breath as it comes all the way in and goes all the way out. Noticing where you feel the breath, noticing how it feels to you, and noticing it each time. So breathing all the way in, notice that top of the breath, and breathing all the way out. And just notice it at the bottom. Allow yourself to feel one more breath all the way in and all the way out. And from here, we'll move on to hands and knees. We're going to focus mostly through the hips, and so we'll focus mostly our warming up through the hips and low back. So finding that tabletop position, letting your hips stack right over knees, shoulders right over wrists. Take a couple of rounds of cat-cow here, letting your inhale drop the belly, gaze can come up a little high. Let your exhale round that spine, gaze going back toward the knees. Finding some motion here through the low spine, through the shoulders, through the hips. And still feeling that breath as it comes all the way in and goes all the way out. Letting your motion follow that breath. And here, if you'd like to change it up a bit, maybe allow yourself to go a little side to side. Maybe wagging through the hips, wagging through the shoulders. Maybe take your neck with you, take your glance over toward that back hip. And back to center, back to stillness, back to that foundation pose. Take a nice deep breath, really feel the fingers press into the mat, feel the knees, feel the feet press into the mat. Taking a step forward with the hands, spreading the fingers wide, spreading the hands a little wider. We'll curl the toes, lift ourselves up to a downward dog. Still continuing with a little bit of motion, we can pedal deeply through the knees, walking the dog, feeling stretch all the way through the back of each leg. Finding a moment in stillness, let that tailbone rise, let the heels melt. Knees don't have to come straight, they can be nice and bent. And take a glance up between the hands. Nice big step forward with that left foot. Feel that left foot forward. Walk that back foot back as far as it feels right and let the knee come to the floor. Uncurling the toes, we'll really press that foot down into the mat. You can lift that knee a bit if you like. Moving into a lizard pose, we'll plant that right hand, left hand is going to walk to the inside of the foot. The knee's going to walk, or the leg's going to walk out just a little bit, keeping our knee stacked right over the ankle. So here's a lizard pose. You're welcome to stay right here and just feel this pose. Feel where you feel that stretch. It could be through the hip, it could be through the hamstring. And our deep stretchy poses, our deep stretchy yin classes, we hold our poses for a little longer. So we really get the benefit of that whole stretch. We get the benefit of releasing into it, of relaxing into it, and just letting it be. So you're welcome to stay here in this lizard as long as it feels right. Maybe it'll feel better to have hands up on a block if it's a little too deep for the hips. Maybe a little deeper. You can bring elbows down toward the block. If you're feeling pretty open in the hip, you want to go even farther down. And set the block aside. Bring the elbows all the way to the mat. So continuing to feel that breath. Really feeling the stretch through the hips. Letting each breath allow that hip to soften. So much tension and so much stress is held in the hips and the shoulders. So as we release that hip, you might find a release through your emotions. From here, from this lizard pose, we can keep it right here or go a little deeper into a dragon pose. To do that, we'll take those toes, point them out to the edge of the mat, keeping our knee staying in line with that ankle. Let the knee open to the side, let the foot stay flexed. So again, you can stay up on hands. Those elbows can come to the floor, to the block, really opening up into that dragon pose. So dragon pose, it's like the dragon wing hanging out there. We got our tail behind us. Just imagine us here on this big pile of gold or whatever the dragon likes to hoard. And then release. You might still feel that breath as it comes all the way in and goes all the way out. Maybe you notice yourself soften a little more with each breath. And as we come out of this pose, we'll bring our knee right back over the ankle. Our hands can come right back under our elbows, under our shoulders. To counterpose this, we'll move to a half split. So we're going to bring our weight back toward that back knee, straightening our front knee. Find that release through that hip, release through that back hip. If you want that deeper stretch, you can draw the toes a little closer to the knee. Hold this one for just a moment, just to counter that deep stretch of that lizard pose. Working our way back toward a downward dog. We'll walk our hands back forward. We'll curl the back toes and we'll step straight back into a downward dog. With a little bit of motion, counteract that deep held pose. Again, walking those knees and continuing to breathe. And staying on that left side, we'll come into that pigeon pose. So we'll once again find stillness. Then bring that left knee up toward that left wrist, ankle toward the opposite wrist. Let ourselves release once again to the mat. Once again, walking that back foot back as far as it feels comfortable. We can press the top of the back foot into the mat. We'll take pressure off that back knee. Let the hips settle in toward the earth. If you find your back hip doesn't quite come to the floor, block or pillow once again can help with that. Allow yourself to release into that pose. So finding your pigeon pose, letting your heart lift tall, letting your hips sink toward the mat or toward the block. So this foot here can stay where it is. It can come a little farther forward to make it parallel with that front edge of the mat. You can bring it straight behind to sit on that foot. Another option here, if this really bothers your knee or your hip for any reason, you lay back to lying figure 4 pose in whatever way that works for you. But from that pigeon pose, again, allow yourself to release into it. So once you've found a pretty stable foundation, a pretty good stretch that feels right, you might like to come to a sleeping pigeon. Once again, we can bring those elbows toward the floor. Keeping that back foot pressed into the mat. Keeps our back foot active. Keeps our knee safe. And if going deeper into this pose feels right to you, you're welcome to walk hands forward. Bring that heart toward the floor. Bring that forehead toward the floor. Finding your sleeping pigeon. And transitioning from this pose to a different pose, we'll bring our hands back up, keeping our right knee bent. We're going to sit down onto that right hip all the way. So if you're sitting on a block or a pillow, we can remove it. Roll ourselves around so that we keep that left knee, so that we keep that right knee straight, that left foot, pressing it into the thigh. Take our heart, turn it toward our extended toes. Hands can reach overhead just to really open that heart toward the leg. Let the heart come forward. Finding your edge, wherever you stop naturally, that's where you're going to stop. That's your edge. And let hands release toward the floor. Letting heart melt, letting chin release toward the chest. And this might be enough for you. Maybe you like to take your hands, take them around the foot, and really find that stretch in the back of that leg. So yeah, just releasing into this pose. It's a counter pose to that pigeon pose. It's a deep stretch behind that right leg. Allow each breath to be felt all the way in and all the way out. Feeling each breath, allowing yourself to soften. And with each breath, letting go of that whatever's not serving you. Come out of this pose, we'll walk our hands back towards center, sitting up nice and tall. Move ourselves back to hands and knees. We'll face the other side of our mat. So setting up your tabletop once again, making sure those hips stay right over the knees, shoulders right over the wrists. Will flow once again through cat and cow. So inhaling, letting that belly hang to your cow pose. Exhaling, arching that spine up, gaze back toward the knees to cat pose. Letting your breath guide you as you flow. Just a couple more times here. And if you like to switch it up, finding whatever might be feeling stiff or tight, and find some motion there. Before we set up back toward the pose, make sure this block is up nearby. So if you're going to use it on the other side, we'll use it again on this side. Moving toward our downward dog pose, walk the hands forward just a bit, a little wider. Spread the fingers wide, curling toes, lifting tailbone. Take a moment to find some motion again. Deep bends in the knees, one at a time. Walking the dog. Still finding that breath to be nice and slow and even. Moving towards stillness. Take that tailbone, let it rise toward the ceiling. Let that heart melt toward the floor. Moving to our lizard pose, take that giant step forward with that right foot. You might take one step, might take a couple, you might need to guide it, it's totally fine. Walking back foot back as far as it feels right. Let that knee lower to the floor, uncurling those toes. Plant the left hand, right hand come to the inside of that right foot. Maybe walk the right foot out just a bit. So setting up that foundation first, make sure our foundation is nice and stable. Make sure it feels pretty good here, and you're welcome to stay right here. Again, options are taking that block, which your hands come a little higher, gives you a little less intensity in that hip. Hands can be at the floor. Maybe the elbows come down toward the block. And for that deeper sensation, elbows can come all the way toward the floor. So we find that release through the hip or wherever you're feeling tension. Let that breath be full. Let that focus be on the breath as it comes in. and goes out. Again, if you're feeling pain in that back knee, just pressing the top of your foot into the mat just a bit will take some pressure off that back knee. So you're welcome to stay in this lizard pose in any way that works for you. Or if you want to move to that dragon pose once again, you're taking that front foot, really flexing that ankle, keeping the toes drawn up toward the knee, let the knee open out to the side. Dragon pose. Notice that full deep breath as you feel that release through the body. Letting each breath allow you to let it go. Coming out of this pose, bring that knee right back over the ankle. Walking hands back up if they're down on the floor. Take a counter stretch to that lizard pose, walking our hands back a bit as we straighten the front knee, bending over that back knee, drawing the toes up toward the knee for that deeper stretch. If hands don't quite come to the floor here, you can always use a block or two or a pillow or two. Take your hands a little higher. Now walking ourselves back forward, back toward a lunge as we step our feet back toward a downward dog. Taking a moment to find some motion, really find that deep bend in each knee. It could be one at a time, it could be both if you like that. As you're ready, moving into that pigeon pose once again, so plant that left foot, the right knee can come forward, set it behind that wrist, ankle toward the other wrist. So we walk the back leg back as far as it feels comfortable, walking toward, bringing our back hip down toward the floor, to a block, to a pillow. As you set up your foundation, let your hips melt toward the floor. Feel that stretch first. Taking whatever options will work better for your body. Again, this could feel very different on this side. And once you found yourself feeling pretty settled, it feels pretty good, you can stay here, or you're welcome again to come down toward a sleeping pigeon, bring elbows to the floor. Be walking hands forward, bring that heart all the way to the floor. Letting yourself find that release that feels good to your body. And wherever you found, just continue to feel that breath. Feel that breath as it comes all the way in and goes all the way out. Let that focus really follow your breath. Let your mat be there to support you. And as you're ready to move out of this pose, walking back up toward that proud pigeon, if you've gone toward any sort of a sleeping pigeon, sitting up nice and tall, removing that block or that pillow if you're sitting on one, releasing that hip all the way to the floor as we find ourselves rolled back around, keeping the right knee bent, left leg is straight, toes are pointing up toward the ceiling. Take the heart, point it toward the extended toes, hands can come overhead to start, just to set up that body, to set up that foundation. And letting that heart release toward the toes. Finding your edge, wherever that might be, wherever you just stop naturally. Hands can release to the floor and chin can release to the chest. Another option, of course, is to take hands around the foot. Really draw the crown of the head toward the toes, head to knee pose. So at no time are we forcing anything. We just allow ourselves to feel that stretch. And as you're ready to release the pose, walking hands back towards center, walking heart back towards center. Walk yourselves back to a nice, easy seated position. Take a moment to connect with that breath. Letting each breath be full. Noticing how you feel. Noticing anything that might still be tense, maybe move it around just a little bit. Taking one more full deep breath, letting it all come in and letting it all out. Thank you so much for joining me for this yin practice. Have a lovely day. Namaste.